Hello and welcome to the first Necromunda guide in too long. And today we're going to be going over the new Halls of the Ancient books in all of its glory and basically covering how the Squat Prospector gang has been updated, as well as an entire gang guide for the Squat Prospectors as they stand now. We'll first be going over a general overview of the gang, and as part of that I'll do the skills and weapons, because they're going to be something that is key to the gang. It's something that is returning from previous, so if you've already watched my original Squat Prospectors rundown, this is just going to be an updated one with a fair amount more playing experience, game experience from previous campaigns that we've had squats in that you can see on the channel. And yeah, as we work through them, we'll then go over the specific weapons for the exosuits, which are new, because they're very specific to those squats and squatettes. So yeah, the main strength of the squats in the game is obviously their higher toughness, because they've all got toughness 4, so you're on par with Goliaths. So the majority of basic weapons that gangers will try and attack you with, as well as most gangers outside of Goliaths in combat, they'll be wounding you on 5s, because obviously there's one difference between, say, an auto gun and las gun, stub pistols, and your toughness, which is a massive bonus. Now, you've got a strength of 3, so it's just average for most gangs, right, for everyone. But it's not that much of a downside, I wouldn't say. It ties into the squat's main benefits is basically being really good with damage output. You've got an average to hit rolls on everyone, and it's not as average as, say, Enforcers, which are 4-ups including their champions to hit. But you've got 3s on your champions, 4s on your gangers, which is basic. What you do have, though, is incredibly good high-tech weapons and some ability to improve the hit chances as well with some of the new additions that we get in this book. So essentially what you get in this book is your ancestry, where your Squat Prospectors have come from as a gang. So what, like, Halls of the Ancestors there, and a couple of those can help with improving your hit chances as well. So it's geared towards this ranged combat, so your actual strength doesn't matter that much, because hopefully you'll be blowing away people before you get into combat, and it's sort of a last resort to be in combat. Now, on the downside of squats, in game you've got a lower movement speed. Again, Goliath level of 4, because they've got the stunty legs. The fact that they're made for sprinting isn't captured within the rule set. Very good over short distances, but he's not, just not captured. And it is a big downside. If you've not played Necromunda before, that 1 inch of movement value really actually hinders your ability to move about the map as you play. It's a much bigger difference than you would think. Next, you've got a lower initiative. You've got initiative 5 up on your base gangers. That does get improved, obviously, on the Juve and on your... Yeah, basically just on the Juve. You can mitigate that with some of your skills, but that is obviously then requiring you to use your skill, especially for your champions, in mitigating your lower initiative. And it is actually something that I will be recommending through the guide, is that you use that skill, because one thing that I found is good for combating squats is when you're playing on a Sector Mechanica style multi-level board, is just shooting a stub pistol at them, and if you hit, they fall off. So, which can just be incredibly annoying as a squat player. But yes, you have an ability to mitigate that, but it's costing you skills that you'd otherwise put elsewhere. So you think, it's the movement and the falling off things. As I said, you average in melee when it actually comes to hitting people. A downside across the gang for any melee fighters that you might have is that you don't have access to agility because you're fairly you're not agile, you're a squat, so you're not going to have spring up or the ability to use it with your low initiative. Ferocity is also a secondary skill, so you're not going to be able to take it to start out, and it's going to be harder to get Nerves of Steel to stay stood up when other things are going on. So it's going to be harder to use those combat champions that are usually where the big combat damage comes in. All the gangs that don't have access to ferocity from the start, that are combat, like Ogryns, say, have access to other skills that semi-mitigate it, such as the nah skill, which allows them to do like a third action. And even though it doesn't allow them to charge after standing up, it does allow them to use versatile weapons after moving and standing up. So it gives them options to use their combat characters with versatile weapons. Squats don't have that. So I don't think the combat characters quite work with how they are. I think they're definitely on the downside. Maybe you'll get some counter charges with them, but I do think they end up quite expensive for the characters that they are. Now, out of game, so in the post-battle phase, things like that, squats have, I think, a very strong game there. They get lots of credits, so saying that their champions actually are a bit more expensive, maybe even a credit sink, I wouldn't be too worried about it. After initially setting up a gang, my feeling is you don't particularly want to go into any combat squats particularly, or not, at least not investing too many credits in there. After a few games, there are a lot of ways in which your credits can have spiraled to the point where you've got so much income that it's just not a worry. That comes both from their ancestor, wisdom of the ancient skills, as well as their ancestry of your squat gang that you'll select at creation. Now, each of these gives bonuses in various ways. For example, having wrecked vehicles that you might have wrecked of your opponents give you an additional d6 times 10. Being able to work territories harder than normal, or simply gain credits as if from nowhere in some cases, representing your ability to find scrap and things like that. You can also gain credits to spend on war gear, so essentially gaining you credits by not having to spend your main allocation of credits from games on war gear selections. So all things that just make the credits game a bit easier for you. And it's something that's actually going to tie into your upsides as well, because although in game you have these upsides of having increased damage output to your ranged weapons particularly, the downside of that is that they're paying an appropriate cost for those weapons. So we'll go into the weapons section, I'll explain what I mean. And you'll notice that Phil isn't with me in this video. He is on the Warriors of Chaos, the Empire of Man Arcane Journal video that's also released today. And that's because Phil loathes squats. He is more of an elf person, but it's more that he finds the additional benefits that squats get really harsh. Now, I think actually they are fine as they are. So what is the benefit? Now, Ironhead versions of weapons that are available like universally across your gang, pretty much every weapon within the gang is an Ironhead version of another weapon. And Ironhead versions of weapons gain an additional rapid fire dice compared to what they would usually. So, say a stub gun gains a rapid fire dice, gains 1. A bolt gun or auto gun that already has a rapid fire dice gains a second rapid fire dice. So the actual damage output of those is much higher. You're doubling if you just roll a single shot on your rapid fire dice, and it sort of gives you that additional chance to get to like 3. Obviously, if it really pops off, you could just get 6 shots and hose down 6 fighters across someone's gang if they stood close enough together. On the downside of that, obviously, you're chancing more out of ammo rolls because you're rolling the multiple ammo dice. So it's particularly bolt guns where they've got a 6-up ammo, so just never reload. If you go out of ammo on a bolt gun, it is near never worth reloading, I have found. Have a backup weapon. So you'll go out of ammo much more often. To note, you don't have to use all of the rapid fire dice that you've got all the time. So if you've got rapid fire 2, you can just fire the weapon with rapid fire 1. And there's no actual downside to that, other than the fact that you've overpaid for a gun. Because the other sort of semi-downside to squat weaponry is that it's near double the expense of other guns. Now, the reason it isn't just flat double the expense of other guns, as I've said, that increased risk of going out of ammo for some key weapons like bolt guns, but also you've got to think about how much these are costing you. So the bolt gun, rather than being 55 credits that everyone else pays for a bolt gun, your Ironhead bolt gun is 95 credits. So it's near double. Your Ironhead autogun, 25 credits, rather than 15 that everyone else pays, near double. And that's going to result in less bodies on the board for you as the squad player. And it's something that I think you need to be really careful of, because even though you've got these very concentrated amounts of firepower, not having the bodies to soak up damage, yes, you've got your toughness 4 to mitigate it a little bit, but not having the bodies to soak up damage can really hurt. And you're still only getting the one chance actually to hit that everyone else is getting. So actually I find them a little bit that they're a very close range firepower based gang, because you sort of run up to make sure your shots start hitting so that you're not wasting bolt guns, expensive weapons, expensive gangers at long range when they're just not hitting and also going out of ammo. I find that you tend to want to wait until you get into close range, and then you unleash this torrent of firepower, hoping that you just blow away your opponent in that turn. Now, it's a bit of an overview of the weapons. Let's go over a few more weapons in detail, because there are a few that don't quite work as expected. Now, the first easiest one to go over that doesn't quite work as expected is the flamers, because flamers just don't work with rapid fire dice, right? Instead, they have the flamestorm rule. And the flamestorm rule is when you roll your ammo dice, you still auto hit. When you roll your ammo dice to see if you go out of ammo, the amount of shots that you get there is the amount of hits done to the closest model to your firing model that is hit. I hope that makes sense. So, yeah, the first model that you hit gets hit with the firepower dice amount of hits. So say your Ironhead Flamer is Firestorm 1. So the first model hit, rapid fire dice number of hits. You've then got the Hand Flamer, which is the same, and Heavy Flamer, which is the same. Now, the Hand Flamer, of note, I think is particularly good for squats. Like, Juves with Hand Flamers are really quite good. Now, although obviously squat flamers, as I've said, are going to be more expensive than everyone else, but so is every other weapon that they've got. I still think it's quite an attractive option to have one of your digger Juves having a Hand Flamer and then getting this more assured taking out of the enemy, or at least neutering of the enemy because of Blaze. The next weapon that we're going to come to that I think is worth pointing out actually isn't a weird weapon. It's the stub gun. I actually really like the stub gun across this guy. I really like the stub gun anyway. Dum-Dums make them incredibly good and versatile weapons for relatively cheap. Now, the stub gun being 10 credits is still very cheap. Yes, it's the cost of an auto pistol on everyone else's gang, but it still has the plentiful trait. Now, adding Dum-Dum rounds to that for another 5 credits gives you a rapid fire 1 strength of a bolt pistol weapon. I almost said bolt pistol because in effect it very often is when things only have 1 wound. So it's a very cheap platform of 15 credits to give to your fighters. I actually really, really like it in the squat gang. It keeps your fighters cheap. You can start out with it and then end up with the stub gun as a backup weapon. Having a stub gun as a backup weapon to a bolter is incredibly useful for when you do go out of ammo. It keeps you relevant to the game, and the Ironhead stub gun, being able to have 2 of them for 20 credits and staying relevant to the game, being a Juve with 2 stub guns, really, really good. Now, Ironhead Melter, terrifying, obviously. Ironhead Grenade Launcher with seismic grenades is one that stands out. Now, what a seismic grenade is, it's a frag grenade with -1 AP, is obviously blast 3 inches, knockback, and seismic. Now, what seismic does, essentially pin people even if they have the Nerves of Steel skill. Not particularly useful against Eschers who've got Spring Up, but against every other combat-based gang, or even any gang that is going to be relying on using actions, which is all of them, I think it's really, really useful. And it's actually one of the squat weapons that's relatively cheap, being 50 credits. Also, in Ash Wastes, it forces vehicles hit to make a loss of control check. So, and especially against the bigger vehicles, forcing loss of control checks is incredibly, incredibly useful, because it means that they can just roll and that is the vehicle done. Whereas when you start looking at taking out ridge haulers, it's actually relatively hard to do across a game. I find lots of the time it's worth just firing at your opponent's fighters and letting that ridge hauler do what it wants until you've taken out enough of your enemy's fighters that it's just forced off the board anyway. Seismic helps you get round that by forcing loss of control checks. So that is one of the weapons that really stands out to me actually in the squat list. I am someone that absolutely loves concussion carbines in the Palatine Enforcers list. Now, next to really point out, other than just like sort of stating weapons, like I could give you the bolt gun. It's a bolt gun with rapid fire dice. It's largely like that. But the next things to note that really are worth going over within the list are the power pack weapons. Now, what power pack weapons are weapons mounted on your dude's power pack and essentially don't take up a hand, so it can be had in addition to any other weapons your fighters carry, so it gets round the limit of 3 that your fighters might have, or you can have a heavy weapon with a pistol and a power pack weapon. The real benefit of them, though, is sidearm and melee weapons, which all of the current power pack weapons are, can be used in addition to your weapons held in your hands for an additional attack when you're in melee. And 2 of them sort of help to get round the squat's lack of nerves of steel. So those 2 are the Bolt Spitter and the Stone Burner. The Bolt Spitter is a 10-inch range with a 4-inch shot, like strength 4, AP -1, damage 1, ammo 5 up, rapid fire 1, sidearm. It gets +1 to hit in short range, and it's relatively cheap as the weapons go at 40 credits. Now, strength 4, AP -1 is definitely nothing to sniff at, and having it as an additional weapon, I really like it. Allows that champion to stand up and do something when otherwise they might have their hands full, or it gives your combat champion a thing to do. The Stone Burner is a bit more pricey. It's 70 credits. It's 2-inch short, 4-inch long, no accuracy modifiers. It's strength 5, AP -2, damage 2, 5 up, ammo roll, and it's got melter, so is terrifying, because if you do enough damage to take your opponent to an injury roll when you're in short range, which combat is, as well as having the 2-inch shot, you just take them out and you count as having skulled them. So it skips that roll and therefore is terrifying. Yes, the strength of 5 isn't as good as a normal melter's obviously strength 8, but being in combat is so magnifying of how good it is. At 70 credits, it is a bit pricey. For 60 more credits, you can get a melter gun. But if you do want to go into like a sort of squat combat build, into the new exosuits, those 2 weapons are the ones that I think you're really going to be looking at on your power pack. You do have another 4 melee weapons. You've got the Stone Saw, which is strength +1, AP -1, damage 1, and rending power pack weapon. It's 25 credits on most fighters, so it's worth taking if you have an excess of credits, which you may do because of your ancestor skill and ancestor background. You've got the Drill, which is strength 3, AP -1, damage 1, which that's only applied to the Tyramites, so I get why it's strength 3, but it's no web that comes off Vansar spiders. You've got the Gem Extractor, which is strength +1, AP -1, damage 2, but doesn't have rending, and the Gem Extractor is double the credits of the Stone Saw. So whether or not that is worth it versus damage 1, I don't know. At 50 credits, I'd be likely to just go with another 20 credits and go to the Stone Burner at that point, to be honest. And then the Ironhead Arc Welder, which is 100 credits. It's the most expensive one of the bunch. It's strength +2, so in majority will be strength 5. AP -2, damage 3, and Blaze. Blaze will be good for obviously mitigating incoming attacks. The damage 3, the same, because it's 1 more than that Stone Burner, being 2 with them. Although Stone Burner's got Melter, doing 3 damage, being able to take out a brute in 1 hit, or at least damage a brute in 1 hit, is incredibly good. And then you've still got a 50% chance of setting that brute on fire. The downside of the Arc Welder is that it's combat only. So my recommendation would be to, when you are equipping these power pack weapons, do the ones that are ranged as well and don't serve the function of your main weapons. So in main, if you have dual stub pistols, Ironhead stub pistols with dum-dum rounds, you probably don't need a bolt spitter. Maybe go with the stone burner. If you are rocking about with a high-powered combat weapon, you probably don't need the stone burner, though you may just want to throw it on. It's quite expensive at 70 credits for just a single more attack. So my feeling is to not go for it if you also have a combat weapon, and to go with the bolt spitter. So say Exo Kin and the Exo Master, I would be thinking about bolt spitters because it gives them a ranged option with a longer range of 10. Stone burners, I'd be thinking more a champion that has got a ranged weapon, my leader that has got a ranged weapon, so they can get that bit more punch in combat. The other ones I find fairly skippable. Now, that is the weapons. There are some combat weapons. We'll go over them if necessary during the entries of the fighters. Exosuit weapons in particular we will be going over, but they are specific to those exosuits, so we'll wait till then and give them a more specific rundown because they are the new thing for that exosuit, and you can find that in the timeline below. So let's go on to the skills, because this is a bit of a framework for your champions, for your leader, and is one of the squat's new unique things. So the wisdom of the ancient skill tree, you've got where there's scrap, there's credits, and in the receive reward step of the post-battle sequence, as long as the fighter's not captured or in recovery, the gang earns an additional d6 times 10 credits for every vehicle belonging to an opposing gang they wrecked. So note that this fighter doesn't have to have taken part in the battle for this to take effect. Much more use in the Ash Waste. If you are playing an Ash Waste campaign, it may very well be worth it. Now, as I said, if your opponent has a heavy vehicle, it is quite hard to take out those vehicles. So it depends what sort of things you're facing, whether this is going to be useful. However, if you've got a champion with a seismic grenade launcher, along with this skill, it can be very useful even against the biggest of vehicles in the Ash Waste. Obviously, it relies on a bit of luck, failing that loss of control check, having them flip after they do, but it is one of the ways to take out those big vehicles. You've got my favourite, my favourite game-wise, nobody pushes Kin around. A fighter with this skill is never moved a result of a weapon trait or skill being used against them. So no knockback or bull charge causing knockback. They are also automatic, I suppose no hurl as well. They also automatically pass any initiative check they need to take to avoid falling when going from standing to prone whilst within a half inch of a level or platform edge. So this is the skill that I think mitigates a large downside of the squats. I think it's basically the one that is not an auto take, but is a bit of a no-brainer and an easy one. If you can't decide what skill to put on your squat champion, put this one on, because you will fall off things a lot with your initiative, an annoying amount, and it just stopping that is so useful. You've got Chemical Bronze Never Break. The fighter can use a chem twice before it's removed from their fighter card. Now, I like the idea of this skill, but you can't take any chems on starting the gang. So you have to go to the trade post, so it's not useful in the first game. I'd probably leave this till later in the game. If you want to go really heavily into stims, I'd leave this till later in a campaign to take. Largely though, if you're going to take chems, a friends on harness is usually better than most of the time Friends On is the thing that you end up taking, because it gives you 4 ferocity skills that are all good, including Nerves of Steel, for the price of a chem. Now, a Friends On harness lasts forever anyway, so it's a bit of a redundant skill, I find this, though it is my favourite in, like, just that they are like all these miners hyped up on space speed, doing loads of chems all the time, and getting the opposite of being tolerant to it. You've then got Dependable like Kin, ignores the unstable trait on any weapon they are equipped with, and may re-roll ammo checks they take. Fairly useful. You are going to go out of ammo a lot with this gang. Your skills are usually worth, if you work on like 20 credits of value to your fighter, is it worth re-rolling an ammo check for 20 credits, or do you want to just take a rapid fire stub gun with dum-dums and not have to spend an action reloading? I tend to think the stub gun with dum-dums, yes, that you could not go out on that initial one, but really the guns that I'm massively worried about it on is bolt guns. I wouldn't bother using this on a champion with an auto gun, and I still don't think I'm going to succeed in that ammo roll with the bolt gun. So I just find it's a bit of a skippable one for me personally. Stubborn to the last. When this fighter is taken out of action before being removed from the table, they may immediately make a shoot or fight basic action, even if they don't have a ready marker. This, I really, really like. It both gives cinematic moments to your gang where they're like, you're going in the book, bang, hit someone on the head. It gives cinematic moments to your gang, and also increases the usefulness of all of your fighters that take it, because there's always going to be the point where they go out of action, or near universally. If you are taking a combat champion, it's a toss-up between No One Pushes Kin around and Stubborn to the last, because it means that you can get charged by your opponent's combat monster and still be able to actually do something about it. So I do like that one. And then there's always another secret. When this fighter opens a loot casket, they may add an additional D6 times 10 credits to their gang's stash. Now, actually, weirdly, a lot of the time we forget in my group to put loot caskets out. If you were playing with loot caskets, it's obviously very good. If there's usually 2 on the table if you're putting them out. So if you manage to get your fighter over to that loot casket, it's a good bonus. The amount of times your situation will come up that this fighter is the one that is opening the loot casket, I'm not sure of. It's like sort of the mentor skill. I had my Orlok leader with mentor for a long time, thinking, I'll just make sure she's near everyone that's skilling up. And actually, because of the frantic nature of Necromunda, you can't often engineer those situations to gain usage of that skill. So you're probably better off with something else like No One Pushes Kin around. But it is there is the ability, if you want to just have a champion whose job it is to get to that loot casket and then shoot people, it's definitely a way you can get more credits. It's just, you've then got a split task with your champion, and I quite like having single tasks, overriding jobs that my champions are going to do in a game. It's one of the reasons why I find the sort of middle of the road gangs a bit harder, because you don't have this clear way to play. And I think it's in microcosm, this is one of those. It's splitting what your champion wants to do. So that is the squat skills. I think that gives us an overall view of the squat gang. So I think we can actually get into the individual fighters, and then at the end we'll go over the squat ancestries and how that changes stuff. Okay, so first up we get the Ironhead Squat Chartermaster. You've got, on this, is 115 credits, so fairly usual for a leader. We've got movement 4, weapon skill 3+, ballistic skill 3+, strength 3, toughness 4, as is the usual for squats. 3 wounds, initiative 5, 2 attacks, leadership 5, cool 5, will 5, intelligence 6. So on this, to note, you've got the joint highest weapon skill on your gang. Your champion will end up at ballistic, weapon skill 4. Your ballistic skill 3 is the joint highest as well. You've got no particular benefits for close combat. You're not higher strength. 2 attacks isn't particularly good. It's champion level for most other gangs. Yes, it's leader for a lot of them as well. But what I'm saying is it's not like Goliath Stimmer level of close combat power. 3 wounds is fairly hefty. It's the same as the Orlok leader. Goliath leaders may have it as well, but he's on the high side. So wounds high, toughness like squats high, and fairly good mental stats, but nothing to write home about in any of the categories really. You've got gang hierarchy leader, obviously, group activation 2, as is standard, and your skills come down to brawn primary, leadership primary, and shooting primary, with combat, savant, and wisdom of the ancients all secondary. So that actually puts no one pushes kin around into secondary. You've not got access to true grit or nerves of steel. Obviously no spring up, but what you do have is shooting primary, which actually for squats, and actually a lot of the gangs that are shooting focused, having shooting primary I really like, because of hip shooting essentially. But for squats particularly, to make up for that lack of movement, being movement 4 rather than movement 5, I love the idea of having hip shooting on the leader. I think it's, and pretty much anyone that you're going to not be taking no one pushes kin around on. Having leadership primary, obviously normal. You may want to take overseer, though that in recent years I've seen less and less people taking it. Maybe just everyone's got bored of it. There's no particular like slingshot charges available, like say Delac, that are still using loads of overseer that I've seen. One thing that you might want to take note of, yes, I'm talking about overseer too much here, but with your weapons being so much more expensive, overseering to just get your champion to fire twice does come off better credits wise. A lot of the time, say Orlocks, I would just be taking another ganger or another champion with a bolt gun instead, whereas because the Ironhead bolt gun is 95 credits, it tips the balance more in favour of overseer in my opinion at that point. But I don't massively like that style of play just for you using your gang, me using my gang, how it operates. I actually want to be doing something active and cool with all of the individual fighters, so I tend to completely miss out overseer, but I see its use here. Munitioneer is an option on Savant that I've seen people spec into when you get access to secondaries after a few games, like get some XP up and then take a secondary. I'm not the biggest fan of that. It's the same as with the wisdom of the ancients, dependability skill. Re-rolling a bolt gun I see as, yes, it's increasing the chances. I'd prefer to not chance of roll of a 6 up pretty much ever. I prefer to just have a rapid fire stub gun in as backup. So a bit there. It's just a shame really that the ferocity skill is off limits. Yes, you can save up to that high level to get ferocity of XP to get ferocity. I believe it's 13 XP off the top of my head. But really, I would say at the point of saving up for that, instead go for something like a Friends on Harness later in the campaign to get access to like those 4 skills: True Grit, Unstoppable, Nerves of Steel, and something else that is just so good for the cost. In terms of loadout wise, obviously the leader is where we see a lot more spending of credits. In this gang, if you're going shooting, obviously your champions can be just as good. In our campaign on channel, Callum was using a hammer, but I don't think he ever used that hammer once, or maybe he used it once just to have used it. Realistically, best bet is bolt guns, because the damage output that you end up with that double rapid fire bolt gun nukes pretty much everything that you come across. Yes, a melter gun can auto fry someone, but putting 6 or 8 shots down at a much 2 to 6 shots down at pretty much any range is just going to be so much more effective and come into the game much more. As I said, somewhere in the gang, if you're playing Ash Waste, I would recommend an Ironhead grenade launcher with seismic grenades. Very well could be here. Melter guns are good, especially with that rapid fire dice, but as I said, with bolt guns, that's what you're going to be easily taking out things at range with if you hit them. And if you are taking out vehicles, it gives you a much higher ability to take out, I find, strong vehicles. Now, if you only want something to have to deal with medium vehicles, light vehicles, that melter gun is great. Like, I run a combi melter champion on my Orlocks all the time. What I would give to be able to have that with a rapid fire dice, so it is good. But again, you've got to be watching those credits, at least initially. Maybe later in the game, maybe you start off with like dual pistol leader and spec into something more expensive later on when you've built your credits a bit more, especially with the out of game squat credit values. But to start off with, I think it's that bit too expensive, whereas grenade launcher, bolt gun are within realms of usefulness. Now, moving down, heavy weapons, I'm not a massive fan of for the squats. Going into an Ironhead heavy stubber, say, although you've got much more firepower, a bolt gun is so much cheaper, especially because you've not got nerves of steel, so you can't stay stood up. That means you 100% require the suspensor. I'd say you require the suspensor anyway, even on a fighter with nerves of steel. But on squats where you've not got that, it's inconceivable to not take the suspensor. And at that point, it's 200 credits, meaning that at minimum, your leader is going to be 315, which is insane to me, to be honest, for the amount of value that weapon gives versus a bolt gun. Now, the power pack weapons, as with what I said in the weapons section and the initial bit of the rundown, the power pack weapons, this is somewhere where I would see the stone burner, because you're going to be taking, say you go with the bolt gun. If you take the bolt gun, taking the stone burner gives you that extra kick in close range. Again, it's expensive. I wouldn't really recommend it at the start, but it gives you that extra kick at close range and can be combined with an additional attack, or it is an additional attack on top of, say, stub pistols or things like that to fight in combat. Now, actual war gear wise, We've got mesh armor and undersuit is pretty standard. Now, you're going to have to go to the trading post to get that undersuit because it's not actually on your gear list. So I just take mesh armor to start and then upgrade it with the undersuit. I pretty much never end up with carapace armor unless creds are absolutely astronomical, spiraling out of control levels. Even the increasing gang rating, I don't find carapace armor worth it for 80 creds compared to mesh armor's 15 plus an undersuit to get the same save. It just never really comes up for me. Same almost with conversion fields. I don't personally like them. My advice is largely coming from the standpoint that I like the boys over toys approach, rather than like all the gear and no idea. Because having action economy and having more activations in a game is going to serve you really well, and especially with squats wanting to take those more expensive weapons like the bolt gun. It's not like, say, Orlocks, Goliaths, where you can have a champ with a bolt gun and a close combat weapons and they're still 200 credits. Ironheads, as soon as you take a champion leader, add a bolt gun, it's 200 credits. Once you get 3 of them, you're on 600, and then you've only got 400 credits to then spec out the rest of your gang with. So you need to be aware to keep them cheaper. So in summary, at the start, I would go mesh armor, bolt gun on your Charter Master, and then start adding things like undersuit first, a backup weapon for the bolt gun. Maybe if you've got some credits at the end of the gang formation, I'd start with your Charter Master adding a backup weapon like the pistol, Ironhead stub gun to them. But to be honest, I'd get my entire gang of make sure I had a lot of fighters first, because an extra body, I would say, is going to serve you better than a backup weapon. I mean, just don't roll that ammo dice, right? Just don't roll the ammo dice and go out of ammo, and you'd be all fine. So next we'll go on to champions, which is the Drill Master, and that's 85 credits. Here you've got squat movement, weapon skill 4, ballistic skill 3, strength 3, toughness 4, 2 wounds, initiative 5, 2 attacks, and 6 is for leadership, cool, and willpower, and 7 for intelligence. You've got group activation 1. Now, you've got Brawn primary and Wisdom of the Ancients primary. As I said in the skills section, no one pushes kin around. I would pretty much always start with, or if you want that cinematic moment, stubborn to the last. You can't really go wrong, narratively speaking, with stubborn to the last, because it gives you that like dying last vengeance moment, or letting go of the grenade. I mean, it's a tactics card is valued at 100 credits of gang distance. Whether it's worth that or not, I don't know. But there is a last gasp tactics card that allows you to do pretty much the same thing as this. So that's worth 100 credits, and that skill is therefore potentially worth 100 credits because it's a full action even, rather than just a single attack. Very good. So, yeah, ferocity secondary here, which means later in the campaign you can start getting skill ups and actually get into that Nerves of Steel without having to spam your like friends on collars on everyone, which just isn't the nicest way to play. Shooting is secondary here, which reinforces sort of having hip shooting on the leader because you're not going to be doing it here. Weapons wise, honestly, it comes down to what you want in your meta. Like, you give these recommendations during guides, and I probably don't say this enough. I give what I think is the best weapons option, which again is going to be bolt gun, the exact same reasons as a gift leader. Again, mesh armor. That's it really for weapons. It comes down to the same calculations. But whether or not you want to go into some other things, if you have some other weapons options that you've used successfully with squats, do let me know below, and I'll make like a pinned post of any weapons combinations that everyone's thought up and pin it to the top of the comments. So next we're going to go into, let's do all of the previous models first, because they all sort of come as an easy group, and then we'll do the Exo Kin. So we've got the Ironhead Squat Drill Kin, which is the Ganger type. Now, it's 50 credits for the Squat Drill Kin. Their squat stats of movement 4, weapon skill, ballistic skill 4, strength 3, toughness 4, 1 wound, initiative 5, 1 attack, 7, 6, 6, 7 for leadership, cool, will, intelligence. They're 50 credits, which on the face of it feels fairly expensive. However, comparing to, say, an Orlock Gunner, which are, I would say, fairly standard for Necromunda, they are obviously losing a movement, but gaining a toughness, losing an initiative, but gaining 1 on both cool and willpower. So it's a fairly reasonable trade-off. I don't think it feels expensive for me, 50 credits, but it's on the higher side of Gangers, but not by too much. I think it's a fairly good platform for your squat weapons. Now, obviously, one of your Gangers can be a specialist, but outside of that, really, I think you want to be having one as a specialist, like just taken straight away. Whether or not you'll actually equip a specialist weapon onto that specialist, I don't know. I would recommend auto guns on these Gangers, to be completely honest. Other than that, Ironhead stub guns with dum-dums, just dual wielding them, never expecting to upgrade them, is fairly solid. Your specialist may want to have an Ironhead stub gun for 10 credits and then upgrade their weapon fairly soon to a special weapon. That's a good ploy, so that you're not immediately shelling out all of those creds on something that isn't truly beneficial at the start. So that's like Ironhead Flamer, I would lean towards, because I mean, Blaze is bad for vehicles as well, and 50% of the time Blaze works on a vehicle every time. So yeah, keep them cheap is my advice. Mesh armor, I'd say, is fairly necessary. At some point you want smoke grenades. I tend to like them on a low value model. There's two ways of looking at it, and you either want it on a low value model that you can just be like, I don't care about wasting their activation this turn, they're going to lob a smoke grenade. I always put them on my like champions and leaders, because I do some sort of mental gymnastics to like, oh, this is why the champion or leader should have the smoke grenade. And then I never end up using smoke grenades as often as I should, because they're really, really useful. Now, the Gangers having a smoke grenade is a good place to have them. However, going on to the Digger Juve, which is 35 credits, is movement 5, so you can move further forward before throwing the smoke grenade. It's got the same strength, obviously. It's lesser weapon skill and ballistic skill, both being 5. Toughness 4, 1 wound, initiative 4, 1 attack, 8, 7, 6, 7 for leadership, cool, will, intelligence. Now, this is another place that is very often given grenades. In fact, probably the most frequent place that you see given grenades, particularly like photon flash grenades in Escher gangs, are just absolutely everywhere, it seems. Now, the actual weapon loadouts that I would recommend for this is, again, Ironhead auto guns for 25 credits. I actually like dual pistols less on Juves in this situation, because the auto gun has that 24-inch range, has the 8-inch short range for the +1, and also isn't going to be causing you to use 2 weapons. It's only 5 points more, or credits more, than 2 Ironhead stub guns. So I just take that extra 5 credits and take an auto gun is my recommendation. If you want to have like a cool guy using 2 stub guns, I would then use it on the Ganger that we mentioned previously. And that's because when you do take those 2 stub guns and it's twin guns blazing, you go down for the -1 from twin guns blazing to being ballistic skill 5. So I don't massively find it useful to have that Juve, especially since the Juve is getting to like 55 credits worth with 2 Ironhead stub guns. So it just devalues it a little bit. Yes, you can get into close range faster with your movement 5. I tend to not range them too far ahead of the rest of my gang in any other game, or in any Necromunda game, because then they tend to get isolated and picked off for no reason, rather than, say, helping screen my more valuable fighters, or even just following along after a champion stomping on heads and them just pinning people. So Digger Juve auto gun is my recommendation, and Ironhead Squat Drillkin, the Ganger type, I would go the dual pistols here or an auto gun. And if you want some special weapons here, I'd go a single stub gun and then, like, say, a flamer later in the campaign. Now, for Juves and skills, we've got Brawn secondary, Combat secondary, and Shooting primary. So here you can, yes, get the Gunfighter special rule, but you can get that on your specialist, so you could just take it on the specialist instead of the flamer of the Ganger. But to me here, hip shooting again is great. It's a primary skill. It means that you can more easily get into that close range. Yes, you take -1 for the hip shooting, but I think the increased mobility of moving 10 inches a turn and then firing a double fire auto gun is definitely not anything to sniff at. Arguable whether or not it's worth upgrading the armor, though by the time you've paid for the Ironhead auto gun, you're 60 credits, which going to 75 isn't too much of a stretch to preserve your investment, and squats are all about preserving investments. So that is the Squat Digger. So we'll go on to the Exo Kin. So for the Exo Kin, you get the Ironhead Squat Exo Master, who is your secondary champion option. It's 110 credits. You get a movement 4, it's a squat, weapon skill 3, ballistic skill 4, strength 3, toughness 4, 2 wounds, initiative 5, and 2 attacks. And you've got 6, 6, 6, 7 for leadership, cool, willpower, intelligence. What you don't have is group activation 1 on this fighter. Instead, you have Paragon of the Ancestors, which means you can perform an additional post-battle action. This additional post-battle action must be an Ancestor ability. So the Ancestor abilities we'll go through at the end, checking the timestamps below for that. And it's quite a long section, so we'll run through it then, rather than going through it now. But it's quite a useful ability, as we'll see. There's some really powerful options in there. So it's definitely nothing to sniff at, because it can benefit your entire gang in some, or like in some of them, your entire gang in various really powerful ways. For skill access, you have Brawn primary, Wisdom of the Ancients primary, Ferocity secondary, and Combat secondary, but I don't tend to ever go combat, even with my combat characters. It's always ferocity stuff, because I find weapons help me survive well enough anyway. So I don't need to go combat skills, because I find stuff like this sort of fairly useless things in there. I roll my skills a lot, because I just don't want to be shoehorned into one, like the best way of play. But in combat, there's like rain of blows and things like that, which I'm not a massive fan of. Brawn as well, not a massive fan of many of the skills. Ferocity, I would be saving my XP for that and getting Nerves of Steel as fast as possible, because the Ironhead Squat Exo Master and Exo Kin are combat characters. And with that, let's get into the equipment list. In your weapons options, you've got basic weapons, Ironhead Combat Shotgun, and special weapons, you've got a Storm Welder. Now, the standout one of them is the Combat Shotgun, by far. Putting down templates and auto-pinning people is excellent. And because it's an Ironhead Combat Shotgun, getting Flame Storm on the template or two ammo dice worth of rapid fire dice for the salvo shot is very, very good. And it means that you don't have to build this character as a purely combat character. It's sort of the save of the Exo Master, I would say, at the start of the campaign. It allows you to rack up some kills in order to get that Nerves of Steel and sort of, to me, do what is special about the Exo Master. So, heavy weapons wise, you've got the Heavy Melter. It's 150 credits, and it could be really funny to take a Heavy Melter in a one-off game, in a campaign, but there's going to be so many credits involved. I would avoid it like the plague. You've not got access to primary shooting skill to get hip shooting. So like a Vansar champion can run about the board hip shooting with a suspended combi melter. But so you've not got access to that. You're a bit slow. So it's so expensive. It's all in one place. And being a heavy melter, it's short range 9, long 18, +1 at short, strength 8, AP -4, 3 damage, melter, rapid fire 1, scarce, unwieldy. And yes, you can buy a Suspensor from the trading post, but you can't initially. So more reasons to avoid it, I would say. Power pack weapons, you've got the Bolt Spitter, Stone Burner, both as options, and Ironhead Arc Welder. In this situation, if you've gone for the Combat Shotgun to start with, I think you've got more of an option to do the Stone Burner, protect you in melee a bit more at the start. And that comes to 110 credits on top of your own 110 for a Combat Shotgun and Stone Burner, making you 220. And it gives you a bit of rounding as a fighter to start with. So that's the Stone Burner and Combat Shotgun. On the flip side of that, if you want to just go more combat heavy at the start and just chance getting those charges, a Bolt Spitter for 40 credits is relatively cheaper, will allow you to hurt people at range, even pin them so you can catch up to them, or keep in threat range even. And then you can have a close combat weapon, and for those options you've got an Excavator Hammer, Heavy Drill, Hydraulic Drill, Ironhead Power Fist, or a Rock Saw. So what they do are... An Excavator Hammer is a versatile 2-inch, -1 at long, strength +2, AP -1, 3 damage, melee, pulverize, unwieldy, and versatile. Now, I am not a massive fan of that Excavator Hammer, and that's because of the -2 at long range. I just don't massively see it as a necessary thing. It's like the two-handed axe that you can get for, say, other gangs. Having -1, and I suppose squats as well, but they are terrible with -1 to hit compared to other options. I would just completely swerve it. A Heavy Drill is strength user, AP -1, damage 2, and rending. But it comes in at 35 credits. You've got a Hydraulic Drill, which is strength +1, 1 damage, and entangle at 25 credits. Ironhead Power Fist for 60. You've got strength +2, -2 AP, 2 damage, power, and pulverize. And then a Rock Saw for 35 credits. You've got strength +1, AP -1, damage 2, and rending. So you can potentially go to that 3 damage. It's only 10 credits more than the hydraulic drill, but you get that AP -1, the additional damage and rending versus entangle, and I much prefer the layout of that rock saw than I do the hydraulic drill. And for 35 credits, that would be my recommendation for a fighter here. If, like, you could potentially go that excavator hammer, it's whether or not you trust yourself with 2 attacks and that you would become 4+ to hit with versatile. I would much prefer to take my versatile in the form of a power pack weapon that can shoot, because yes, I'm hitting on a 4 anyway, but I get my rapid fire dice. I can fire further with the bolt spitter to be able to pin people across the board. I can even fire further with the stone burner, because that's essentially long range 4 rather than the versatile 2 of the excavator hammer. I just think it pales a little bit in comparison there, and especially with the stone burner being strength 5 with melter, AP -2 off the top of my... Yeah, -2 and 2 damage. I do think you get more use out of that stone burner for 70 credits than the excavator hammer at 50. Now, onto the actual war gear, you come with an exosuit, which gives you a 5+ armor save, so it's essentially mesh armor, and you're not affected by blaze or radphage weapons. Now, that is fairly decent. Having the 5+ save to start with built in, it means that you essentially get the 15 credits there, which is mesh armor, taking, when we compare to the normal champion's cost of 85, that goes to 100. And then you have another 10 credits. Is it worth 10 credits for immunity to blaze and radphage? Well, hazard suits are a similar cost to that, and this is just built in. So it's probably worth it based off that, and he's fairly fit. He's obviously fitting for the squat champion. Maybe I would have liked to see another +1 strength or something like that to help lean into the combat nature of this character, but that's a very minor complaint. You can get field armor, conversion, displacer, refractor. As I've gone over it, I think it's a bit too cheap. You can take an undersuit here for 25 credits, and because you're now trying to create a combat monster taking this, I would take an undersuit to start with personally. And you can take exotic beasts, the Techmites, as you can any of the other champions except for the oculi, and we'll be going over that after these exosuits. So, as a wrap up, how would I equip an Exo Master? I would start off with a combat shotgun. I'd start off with a stone burner. It gives me options at ranged and near. And if I had credits at the end of those two, I'd start taking a rock saw. After game 1, because I want it to be a combat champion, I'd start putting the rock saws and stuff on that then, and I'd start with an undersuit. If I didn't want that combat shotgun specifically, because, well, other guys have ranged weapons, or like proper dedicated ranged weapons, I'd be going for a bolt spitter and a rock saw to start, and it keeps it that bit cheaper. Oh, it does keep it cheap. It keeps it 30 points cheaper on the power pack weapon, and 5 credits cheaper changing the combat shotgun to a rock saw. It allows you to shoot with the bolt spitter at range, and that's a sidearm for melee, so you get 2 close combat weapons in melee. And then you can always add another close combat weapon to taste later, because the rock saw is one-handed. And the bolt spitter is a power pack weapon, so you can still be using it in melee alongside your second close combat weapon in your hand. So, on to the Ironhead Squat Exo Kin Prospects, which are 60 credits each. So, again, that's a Digger Juve with mesh armor on. For that, you have movement 4 rather than 5 on the Juve. It's weapon skill 4, ballistic skill 5, strength 3, toughness 4, 1 wound, initiative 4 as per a Juve, 1 attack, leadership 8, cool 7, will 6, intelligence 7. For this, you get obviously the prospect things, including like hot-headed, promotion to an Exo Master, and you get fast learner, so you don't need to spend an additional 2 XP for each characteristic being increased. For your skills, you have combat primary, brawn secondary, ferocity secondary. I think you either want to be skilling up into nerves of steel again for the exact same reasons as the Exo Master, or increasing your stats. I don't think go for a combat skill straight away, or brawn. You can near skip it forever. Ferocity is such a good skill tree. I find you can roll in. I constantly roll Berserker, which is one of the worst ones, and it's still +1 attack on the charge as Berserker. But I find you can roll on Ferocity and get a useful skill quite a lot. If you really want Nerves and Steel straight away, save up for it. It's not too expensive, but even just rolling to keep the skills cheaper, you're not really going to be disappointed with Ferocity. They're all absolutely solid. In your weapons options, you've got a Storm Welder for 75 credits. I would swerve the hell out of that. It's unstable, but what really does it in is the Reckless, which means it will hit anything in your forward arc. So you've got to be really careful with its use, and it's already quite expensive at 75 credits. If it was 35, I would definitely say go for it, take a Storm Welder, and just be very careful with how you use it. But for 75, it's a massive swerve. You just don't need that headache in your life. And it being unstable whilst being rapid fire 3 is terrible. Because as soon as you roll an ammo dice, it's, oh, I'm out of action. There goes 135 credits minimum of my gang. And it's just too much to gamble on all the time. If it does hit people with those 3 rapid fire dice, the fact that it's strength 5 is like really shockingly good. Ha! So it's such a hilarious guy all the time. But the strength 5 is very damaging. But to just take out over a tenth of your gang by you yourself firing, never mind the enemy's damage, I just don't find worth it. Power pack weapons is, like, I suppose the weapons options on these prospects is one of the reasons why I'm not a massive fan of them as a platform, as like a thing in the game. Squats are already quite expensive, so 60 credits, so 10 points more than a Ganger, and then you get some quite expensive close combat weapons options, of which the hydraulic drill, as I said, I'd skip. The rock saw, but maybe you go for that because it's so cheap. The rock saw, 35 credits, is sort of the cheapest one you want. And to put that on a Juve level and the Juve to come to 95 points is getting expensive. And to get 2 weapons, because you've no access to stub guns, to take 2 weapons for 130 points is, for me, too expensive on a Juve prospect model. They're sort of throwaway models that the rules are encouraging you to spend far too much on. Now that's to start. Further into the campaign, like 2, 3, 4 games in, I can definitely see taking them just as a cool option. I do like the model, but I just don't like them to start with in a list. I think your Digger Juice, to be honest, with Ironhead autoguns are too solid an option to justify these over them in terms of power level in the game. And that's the 2 new main unit types. So other than that, let's get into the Techmites and then we'll go over the vehicle. Right, so Techmites. In main, there are two types of Techmite, I will say. There are 3 profiles and they each of the different things, but you've got your sort of land automotive based ones, which are the Techmite Autoveyor and the Techmite Excavator. Exovator. So those are the land-based ones. And then you've got the Techmite Oculi, which are the flying drones that you get with the new Scout bike. Now, the first 2, the land-based ones, the Autoveyor and the Excavator, essentially help you with loot caskets. So they are fairly weak in their profiles. The Autoveyor is the weaker of the 2. It's 45 credits, movement 4, weapon skill and ballistic skill 4, strength 3, toughness 3, 1 wound, initiative 4, 1 attack. It's got cool 5, leadership 8, willpower 6, intelligence 6. So it's like a standard ganger from most of the gangs, but it's not got any special sort of attacking offensive powers. What you have is a single weapon, which is from the Power Pack weapons list, which is the same as everyone else, except with a drill in addition, which is the 5 credits, and is a strength 3, AP -1, 1 damage melee attack. You won't ever get, obviously, 2 close combat weapons for that, because you've only got 1 equipment slot for an arm. In that, I quite like the Bolt Spitter. It keeps it quite cheap. It gives it some range punch. Yes, it goes up to 90 credits, which is similar to a lot of other pets. But at Ballistic Skill 4, with +1 at short range, yes, it's only 10 for the long range, but it gives you some punch to be doing some stuff. Maybe adding these to exosuits could give you some additional punch in that way, so they can be given to Exo Kin prospects. It's just you won't get any XP for any of those kills, but what you could do is pin your opponent and force them to have to choose between running away from you or standing up and attempting to pin you back. So it's a way of trying to get round the lack of nerves of steel, but then again you could just put a Bolt Spitter on your Exo Kin. It just, I suppose, costs an action to use that. So it might be worth a Bolt Spitter. What you would be taking this for, though, is the Autoveyor may perform a bypass loot casket basic action, and when rolling to determine the contents, the dice may be re-rolled. So if it explodes, you re-roll it. So it's good for getting additional credits out of loot caskets. In addition to that, the Techmite Autoveyor there's always another secret skill. So that's one of the Wisdom of Ancient skills, which is when this fighter opens a loot casket, they add an additional D6 times 10 credits to their gang stash. It will start to pay for itself after a few games. If you take a Bolt Spitter on the Autoveyor and you roll average, it will take 3 loot caskets until you've paid for the Autoveyor, and in that time you've got a Bolt Spitter in your gang, and that's essentially paying for itself quite quickly. It is also a low value model that you can send after those loot caskets. Yes, you get the token D6 if anyone else opens it, but you don't need to spend a skill on getting that Wisdom of the Ancients skill. It's already here, built in, and it's a low value to then go out and just perform that menial task. So I quite like it. If I could fit it into my gang at the start of a campaign, I may do. The toughness 3 potentially puts me off a little bit. And on that, we have the Excavator, which at 55 creds is the same stats as the previous exotic beast. I'm getting tripped up over the fact that it's an Autoveyor. The Excavator is the same stats as the Autoveyor, except it has toughness 4. It has initiative 4, that's the same. Leadership 8, cool 5, will 6, intelligence 6. It's got the tech bypass skill as well, so can open loot caskets and re-roll what the contents are to prevent explosions, essentially. It can be equipped with 2 weapons this time, and has the nobody pushes kin around skill. Essentially, what this can do is just add more punch to your fighter. If you want a menial tasks, Autoveyor, go for the Autoveyor. If you want something to be more of a traditional exotic beast, go for the Exovator, because it won't pay for itself. It's not add any additional loot. All it's doing is providing damage output, and that's, I suppose, why there's additional toughness. Again, I quite like the Bolt Spitter. You could even go twin guns blazing with 2 Bolt Spitters because it can take 2 weapons. I'm not sure it's the greatest platform to have combat weapons on, because it's only 1 attack, weapon skill 4+. I would tend to stick for some shooty stuff, but that is just me. I prefer the Autoveyor than the Exovator, because I'm not really going to use that. The no one pushes kin around is nice, but it's not 100% needed on quite a cheap thing. The special thing which you're taking these Exovators for isn't so that it's basically a worse fighter. Having a little menial robot to just go about the table collecting scrap is sort of a different option than it just being a differently shaped ganger. So I prefer the Autovator. Onto the second type of drone, we have the Techmite Oculi, which is the new exotic beast that comes with the Trike. As I said, it's 40 credits, movement 7, weapon skill ballistic skill 5, strength 2, toughness 3, 1 wound, initiative 4, 1 attack, 8, 5, 6, 6 for leadership, cool, will, and intelligence. This thing flies because it is a drone. It's got the target point skill that while at least one Techmite Oculi is within 6 inches of an enemy model, their owner reduces any negative modifiers to hit due to cover by 1. So this is something that is sort of getting round that you are a bit worse at shooting than anyone else. Anything that can't take an infrasight on its weapon, essentially this is a bonus to. But if you can take an infrasight that just reduces cover anyway, built into your own weapon, I don't see why you wouldn't do that anyway, because it's the same bonus, but can't be shot out of the sky. So yeah, I don't really see the point of it on anything else. It's not great in combat. It's not got any guns. If you can take an improviser, I would just take him. So not an improviser, an infrascope. I'd just take an infrascope. Now, one thing that it might be useful on is the Ironhead Squat Trike, because on that's weapons, you can't take any infrasights, right? So you get a new crewman that's 40 credits, the ballistic skill 4, leadership 7, cool 6, will 6, intelligence 7. It's part of the crew, part of the ship, part of the crew. You've got leadership secondary, savant secondary, shooting primary, driving primary. Complete shocker for these crewman types. I don't know why I started reading it out, to be honest, because they were all fairly similar. Or within operation, fairly similar. What is the truly new thing is the Svenotar Scout Trike. For 105 credits, you get a movement 8, front 5, side and rear 4, 3 hull points, 5 handling, and save 5 trike. You've got 1 weapon hard point, which is crew operated and front arc. You've got a Techmite oculi control node, so it can control oculi and group activates them as if it was a fighter. It's wheeled and has 2 body, 1 drive, 2 engine slots. That comes with, obviously, no weapons included, but what it can have is a twin-linked auto gun for 40 credits, twin-linked bolter for 115 credits, and a twin-linked... Well, they're both the Ironhead versions, and then it can take a twin-linked melter gun, not an Ironhead melter, for 150 credits, which seems a bit weird. In the exotic beasts, it can take a Techmite oculi for 40 credits. So this is where you would get that reduction in cover thing. But at 105 credits, and then, say, adding a bolt gun for 115 credits, you're 220. What you could then do is add a second trike for 105 credits. Basically, without adding additional credits from your 1,000 credits to that 400 vehicle allowance, you're not going to be able to fit 2 scout trikes into a starting gang. If you just want to keep it to the 400 credits, what you could do is take 2 scout trikes with auto guns. That comes to 145 credits each, so 290 credits. You then add the new driver to each of them, that's 40 credits. That's 370, and essentially you have another 30 credits to go, in which you can't add a Techmite oculi to those 2. If you just wanted to take 1 scout trike with an Ironhead bolt gun, 115 credits, that gets you 120, 220, and 40 for the driver, so 260. You take a Techmite oculi, and then you could actually have 2 motorbikes for normal squats to ride on, though your terrible initiative is going to mean that unless you have no one pushes kin around, you're going to fall over and hurt yourself a reasonable amount. If you do have no one pushes kin around, it means... So even with no one pushes kin around, you still can fall over on a bike. Although squats are toughness 4, so get hurt less often than anyone else. I think it's a bit of a help for a combat squat gang is going on bikes. It's like Ogrins in that you're going to fall over sometimes and then just never be able to get up again, or in a fair bunch of games. I do like how the squat scout trike is set up. I really like the model. The points don't go perfectly into that 400 points. Like you get some vehicles that just fit nicely into 400 points. If you just add a few more credits from your 1,000 credits, it's nice. The big downside, I think, is the lack of transport bed, because obviously it's a scout trike. And that's one thing that I find that squats in the Ash Wastes, as soon as you come up to a rolling road, you need it, because you're not going to be running across gantries above the road. You're going to be confined to that road. You want to be cruising around in a medium or large vehicle, shooting people that come near you, dismounting to hoover up scrap. So I think maybe 1 scout trike and a transport option is probably your best bet, whatever you can fit into the list. So that is a scout trike. Onto the Ironhead Squat Scalvan Explorator. So this is 265 credits. It is quite a nice model, actually. It's like the bulbous head looking moon buggy. It's movement 6, front 9, side 8, rear 7, 6 HP, handling 6+, and a 3-up save. When the Ironhead Squat Scalvian Explorer collides with and destroys either an obstacle or flimsy structure, the Squat Explorator does not suffer any damage as a result of the collision, which is good. It comes with a transport bed. It's got 2 weapon hard points, is tracked, and has 4 upgrade slots to each of the locations. Now, it's got a bunch of options. Mainly, think of this basically as a cargo 8. It's got a couple of differences, but it's going to be a big lumbering thing that's never really going to die. It's going to be something that maybe rolls over if it's going to die, but it will be able to be shot multiple times with the highest strengths of weaponry and not suffer significant damage, particularly to the front. So I won't worry too much in a normal game of it dying. Just watch for it flipping over. So to help with that, the upgrades that I would recommend are things like the all-wheel steering. Despite the fact that you've not got wheels, all-wheel steering to improve your handling by 1 and prevent you getting seismicked by someone else and having to take a handling check and just flipping over. So it just preserves your investment that little bit. Now, there is a lot of creds going to be going into this if you take it. So it's going to be the majority of your 400 cred limit, but actually it's going to help out the rest of your gang get around the place because it's going to provide that transport bed for them and a bit of a gun platform for them. So those are the 2 vehicles. The cargo loads that can be added to the second vehicle, though, you've got basically a 40 credit cargo load. It's valuable cargo, so the controlling player adds D3 times 10 credits to their stash every time you fight a game. If the explorator is wrecked, then the opposing gang adds D6 times 10 credits to their stash if it had a cargo load. So it's a bit of a risk, but as I said, I wouldn't expect it without you actively trying to get destroyed to be destroyed other than it flipping over. During a post-game battle sequence, an Ironhead Squat Scalvian Explorator with an assigned crew and cargo load may take the trade post-battle action in the same manner as a champion, so long as it is not in repair and its crew's not in recovery. So you can just help out with the trades. The Ironhead Squat Container has flow of chemicals. If making a trade post-battle action with an Ironhead Squat Ironhead Squat Sclavian Explorator, that's quite hard to say, it's like she sells seashells on the seashore, equipped with an Ironhead container, then the chems purchased from the trading post have their credits cost halved, rounding to the nearest 5 credits. Sort of tying into the squats skill, as well as them just being like chem loving guys. I'm not, as I said, I prefer the friends on collar when going chems routes rather than just reducing these expendable items, his points cost, and having to buy them again. But I do quite like it. As a vehicle, it satisfies sort of what you need in that it can transport your crew about. Because if anyone's not played Ash Waste, you basically need a transport bed. Otherwise, you guys slow to a crawl in a lot of the missions. And with that, let's get on to the final actual fighter that joins the gang, or has joined the gang. It's the Claim Jumper. So 0 to 1, available to Ironhead Squat gangs only for 60 credits. It's got Movement 4, Weapon Skill 3, Ballistic Skill 4, Strength 3, Toughness 4, 1 wound, Initiative 4, 2 attacks, Leadership 7, Cool 6, Will 6, Intelligence 5. It's part of the crew, so unlike other hangers-on, it will always turn up to the battle. You'll get to use that model that you've bought of the Claim Jumper, because a lot of these hangers-on are really nice models and you hardly ever get to use them, sadly. You've got equipment, a gem extractor, an Ironhead auto pistol, Ironhead power fist, and power maul. They're equipped with frag and smoke grenades, and it's got a Techmite autovator, which is the one that allows you to mine loot boxes for additional gold. Has got a drill and mesh armor. So a fairly solid loadout, to be honest. For that 60 credits, you're getting 50 credits worth of Techmite autovator. You've got fearsome and iron jaw skills, which are solid skills requiring willpower checks to be charged, things like that. your weapons having an Ironhead auto pistol, so 2 dice worth of auto pistol, a power fist, which in itself is worth 60 credits, and a power maul, frag, and smoke, all excellent. And then the out of game benefit of the hanger on is that it can perform the seize the prize post or jump the claim post battle action. Why is the special rule called differently than the post battle action? I don't know. And it's you roll a d6 on a 5+, choose a territory controlled by your opponent. You immediately gain the boon from that territory, as well as your opponent gaining the boon from that territory. You don't sort of use it up and they can't use it, which I think is good for not enraging your opponent or it being unfair on your opponent. But it's an excellent special rule to top off a really good character. And actually, a lot of the squat characters, the base level gangers, champions, I think are solid. So, in summary of all of the fighter types, I don't think they needed much of a boost in terms of Exo Kin to bring them in line with the house books. I think the Exo Kin and Exo Master are quite a nice side grade. Maybe they're even maybe slightly not good enough. We'll see how it sort of plays out after the initial tests that we've done in the Bearfoot studio. But we'll have to see how it plays out. I've got a feeling squats are going to be okay, though. Now, the final thing to do before we go is tell you how to use your squat ancestry. So the squat ancestry is a bit of a long section. So essentially what you do is choose what your ancestry is made up of. So that's a range of clans that you get to choose from, and you get post-battle actions that you can do with your champions depending on what clan you're in. Now, when you buy a champion or leader, you choose one of the 3 available to you, and that is the post-battle action that is available to that champion or leader for all time. You can't keep changing them about. So it's essentially like a skill, but that skill is a post-battle action. Now, you can get further ancestry abilities with XP as if they were primary skills, but being able to only do one post-battle action most of the time means that you're hardly ever going to want to buy any more, unless you're like an Exo Master that gets an additional post-battle action. But at that point, you want to get Nerves of Steel for your Exo Master, so I don't think it's going to come up really. You've got... So let's go over the clans. We've got the Ironhead Squat Anglish Mining Clan. You've got Masters of Coin, which, when this post-battle action is performed, if the gang sells items in the update gang rosters section of the post-battle sequence, you gain the full credits value of the first 3 items that you sell. So it gives you a lot of variability in the items that you're going to be selling off. If you have any dead fighters, you just sell off their gear. You get Hostile Negotiations, which allows you to remove 2d6 times 10 credits from your stash to gain back one of your fighters that is being held captive straight away. Now, the gang holding the captive gains half the amount of credits removed from your stash. I don't know why it's not the full amount, because if it was left till the downtime, they'd get half that fighter's credits value, which can be a lot more than that 2d6 times 10. But they get those. If the gang has insufficient creds to pay, then nothing happens. And if your gang can afford to pay that release fee, you've got to if you've rolled for it and taken the action. Finally, you've got Inheritors of the Waste, which, when performing the Recruit Scion post-battle action, if at least one fighter is deleted from your gang roster during the Clean House substep, then the gang may add a free Ironhead Squat Juve, the Digger Juve, to the gang roster. Only one fighter may perform this post-battle action each battle. That is really solid. It's like it's essentially getting free credits when you suffer a loss. Now, how often that actually comes up versus you wanting to just go to dock, I don't know. but actually going to dock is costing you credit. So sometimes you'll just make that choice. Oh, I'll just let the fighter die and get a free Juve because it's not that much of a downside in whatever particular occasion. So I quite like it. I think it's a solid set of mining clan types, mining clan post-battle actions. It's not the best though. It's not the best. You've next got the Skagfried mining clan, which has they're ploughing new frontiers. This post-battle action is performed. The gang selects one of their territories that does not grant any boons during this post-battle sequence other than income. So essentially, if you only get income from a territory, it's going to give you an extra D6 times 10 credits added to your stash. If it's performed multiple times in the same post-battle sequence, a different territory must be selected each time it's performed. And we'll see this a lot through the post-battle actions. A lot of them seem like they're only supposed to be used once and set, or they're only set up to be used once. You've got secondary, the Explorators rule, automotive tinkering. When this post-battle action is performed, the gang gains 2d3 times 10 credits that must be spent on vehicle, war gear or upgrades, and at the end of this post-battle sequence, they're lost if unspent. That is, I would say, excellent. Between 20 to 60 credits, averaging 40 after every game to just spend on upgrades is really, really good. And with the money saved from that, you get to use Spoil Treasure. When the post-battle action is performed, add 3 to the availability when seeking rare or illegal equipment. So with those 40 credits average that you saved from the last one, you can spend it on 3 higher availability level goods and war gear. So actually a really solid credits-based economy that you're going to be getting from the Skagfried mining clan. The Svardhol mining clan, you get Bitter Enmity, recite grievances. When this post-battle action is performed, the fighter gains the Berserker skill for the duration of the next battle. Definitely want to be using with the Exo Master because Berserker is +1 attack on the charge. And this is essentially like, get the book out, we're going to read from it. The Skull Veterans post-battle action, Patch 'em Up, means that the gang may purchase bionics from the trading post, and all bionics are considered common. It's okay. It's costing you money though. And if you want to preserve fighters, there's another one coming up. And Battleborn Squats. Ironhead Squats with this ancestry may perform the post-battle action Battle Drill. When this post-battle action is performed, any fighters hired during the post-battle sequence earn D3 XP when they add it to the gang roster. I really, really like that. It gets you part way to a random primary skill, which is 5 XP. It can get you into like intelligence or leadership increases in your fighters straight away. And if not, if you roll in for them primary skills, it takes you 1 killing of out of actioning of a fighter or 2 serious injuries of a fighter to get you up to a new skill. It's just absolutely excellent starting with XP, I think. The Tapfakit mining clan get Tinkering, which is gunsmithing. Select one of the fighter's weapons. The weapon permanently gains the mastercrafted trait. So I suppose this is actually where gaining other post-battle actions would come in. It's only one of the fighter's weapons and you can't remove weapons from a fighter. So you won't be able to spread them throughout the gang. But gaining Mastercrafted, really good. It's like 15 credits for Mastercrafted. Allows you to re-roll the hit roll once a game. So this is where I was saying it helps you get round the squat's fairly normal ballistic skills and get better at hitting things, as well as having the overwhelming firepower from their guns to wound things as well. So that's a really good one. You get Custom Rigs. When this post-battle action is performed, the fighter may perform the Negotiate Repairs post-battle action, reducing the cost by 2d6 times 5 to a minimum of 5 credits. So really, really good if you're playing in the Ash Waste, which the squats are sort of made for. They're out in the wastes with the Orlocks, running up and down the roads trying to find new claims. Finally, they're the builders of the underways, so you get the hidden tunnels post-battle action, allowing D3 of your friendly fighters to gain the infiltrate skill for free for the next battle. That is, I would say, incredible. Incredible. Average 2 of your fighters gaining infiltrate is really good. Allowing them to basically infiltrate onto all tops of ledges, so that not so that you can fall off, so that you're in firepower range really fast. You know now how many fighters that is, and this isn't one of the post-battle actions that can only be done once, so you could get many members of your gang infiltrating, and it can be absolutely crippling. Having played versus Deluxe using needleways, which allows infiltrate of multiple fighters a lot, it can be really punishing. So use restraint unless your opponent isn't, because it can create a negative play experience. But hidden tunnels is really good. Saving money on custom rigs is really good. And the gunsmithing for mastercrafting your ranged weapons even is again really good. Hellmaith Mining Clan gets Spider Hunters for Sump Safari. When this post-battle action is performed, select a friendly fighter, make a leadership test for that fighter. If passed, the fighter earns D3 XP. If failed, they go into recovery, so they'll miss the next game. Because it's not convalescence, it's proper recovery. Now, it's fairly good. I like the idea of it, but when you fail that leadership check and a champion has gone out for the next game, you will really feel it. Terrors of the Sump gets the Ironhead squats with his ancestry may perform the press gang post-battle action. What that is make a leadership check for this fighter. If passed, you get D3 free hired scum in the next game. Now that, I would say, is incredible. Hired scum, based on gang difference in the arbitrator section of the rules, are worth about 100 credits each. So you're averaging with this 200 credits of free fighters every game, going up like with a range of 1 to 3, right? So rules of parlay is the law of the sump. When this post-battle action is performed, all gangs that took part in this battle add D6 times 10 credits to their stash. Roll separately for each gang. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, but with Sump Safari that adds XP being fairly good, I just am worried about the risk. And Terrors of the Sump adding 200 credits worth of fighters to your gang every game. And also this coming after your game against your opponent, not before, so it doesn't help them against you. It only helps them against their next opponent. I really like this because it doesn't make just you spiral, it helps everyone in the campaign so long as you keep doing it. And then you can just not do it when you play your least favourite person. Phil, if you're watching. Snorag Mining Clan, you get Denizens of the Deeps, which is, after performing this post-battle action, pitch black rules are automatically infect the next game. You get Under-Earth Tunnelers, which have the modified Techmite post-battle action, which select an exotic beast this fighter is equipped with. For the duration of the next battle, that exotic beast may move freely through impassable terrain if it has sufficient movement to do so, but may not end its movement on or within impassable. It's spending valuable post-battle actions, because a lot of these are really good, on something I don't consider too good. The first one, Midnight Battlefield, if you are set up right and your opponent hasn't got a load of photo goggles and things like that, it can be really good, really punishing. Like I remember one campaign that I played against Phil, and I took loads of smoke grenades and he'd not got any photo goggles, but because I knew it was coming, all of my gang had been saving up for photo goggles and bought a load. And it was really effective, I will say it like that. This second one isn't good. Third, you've got Buried Treasures, which is the overwork post-battle action. Essentially, you work a territory twice now, and then can't use it for the next two post battle steps, including not including this one. So you get it twice now for the cost of 3 overall post battle steps, but the credits are yours now. So it's even worth doing this in, say, the last game of the first phase of a Dominion cycle. So what I'm saying is the last game where you aren't taking territories off each other. You overwork that territory, and because you might lose it in the next game, so you just overwork your best territory. You've got the Trocken mining clan, which have got Lords of Ruin. When this post-battle action is performed, the gang gains 2d3 times 10 credits that can only be spent on common war gear and weapons from the trading post. At the end of the battle, any credits unspent are lost. Really incredibly good. Gaining an average of 20 but going up to 60 at the high end. Credits worth of war gear and weapons from the trading post. Absolutely excellent because it comes for free. You gain the Archaeobot post-battle action, which select one of the fighter's exotic beasts. Their weapons gains +2 strength and the unstable trait. I don't particularly like it because it gains unstable. I know it's on an exotic beast. Yes, it can make a bolt spitter strength 6, but still, that unstable, I just don't like chancing. Dome Exploration is the final one for the Trocken mining clan. When this post-battle action is performed, make an intelligence check for the fighter. If passed, add d6 times 10 credits to the gang's stash. If failed, the fighter goes into recovery. So you have 2 additional money post-battle actions here, which sort of seems insane. Yes, the fighter can go into recovery, but to gain additional credits, and it's just normal credits straight into your stash. It's not XP that you might spend elsewhere. Yes, you might get a primary skill now, but really gaining additional credits quite often, if it's your leader, intelligence 6, you're more than average passing that. Or intelligence 5 for the leader, in fact. I'm going to double check. Intelligence 6. So I think that probably is why it's intelligence 6. It would be really harsh if it was intelligence 5. You've got the Visaki mining clan, which is Death from the Clouds, combat drop. Essentially, when this post-battle action is performed, the fighter arrives as reinforcements during the end of the first round. So you move on if you roll a 3+ from any table edge of your choosing. I think the infiltrates fighter's skill is better and more fighters are doing it, so I'd probably pick that. Far Horizons, you get the scout out post-battle action. The next time the gang rolls to determine the scenario, their player may roll twice and choose which result to use. That is really good. Really good. Controlling what scenario gets used is so powerful. Heroes of High Anchor, finally, you get the call for aid post-battle action, which in the gang's next battle, they may petition a house agent for no credits cost. And house agents can be 200+ credits value of cost in their worth. So that one is pretty insane. It's better than the D3 Scum, I would say. Finally, there's a Splinter mining clan, which over the centuries, many charter masters have formed their own mining clans for whatever reason. They rarely survive more than a few generations, only the hardiest enduring to make a name for themselves and leave a legacy. What this does is select one ancestry ability from another clan. And you can perform that ability with whatever champion or leader selects this at the start. In addition to that, you get survival against the odds, which is not quite dead. When this post-battle action is performed, select a friendly fighter who suffered a lasting injury during the battle. You may discard the lasting injury results they received and roll on the lasting injury table again. The second result must be kept even if it's worse than the original. This one is really good power-wise, but they need to start including that doesn't include memorable death, for one. If you were an arbitrator listening to this, I would say you need to put in it doesn't include memorable death, because it robs the opposing player, and this is every game they get to save a fighter from death. It sort of happens too much. We saw it during the Ferryman Enclaves at the start of Secundus, until my group actually, all of us agreed to remove them. I sort of suggested, what do we think of the Ferryman Enclaves, and all of the feedback came, that enclave that allows the reroll of the death to be is too good. And this is it repeated again. So definitely remove the memorable death thing. Rerolling memorable death, they should just be gone. And have a think about whether or not this is super appropriate. If you were a player, be mindful that although it feels nice to save your own fighter from death, in the same vein, it feels horrible for your opponent. Finally, you get Children of the Core. Ironhead squats with this ancestry may perform an adapt or die post-battle action. When this post-battle action is performed, select one skill this fighter has. The selected skill may be exchanged for any other skill within the same skill set, or a skill from one of the fighter's primary skill sets. This is amazing. This again is amazing. Splinter Mining Clan, I would say, is the best one, hands down. Survival against the odds being the reroll, even memorable death as it's written. This allowing you to roll on ferocity as a secondary skill, and then go, oh no, my Exo Master, by the way, I'm just going to change that to Nerves of Steel. And I've paid much less XP to get a picked secondary skill, because you exchange it for any other skill in the same skill set. So you can randomly generate a skill and then change it for a picked skill in the next post-battle action. It just takes you a game more. Which is kind of insane. So, hands down, to me, the best one is Splinter. And then you sort of choose whichever one you think is best or most fitting for your gang from the other ones. And I think it's saying that, although it's the best, I think if you were restrained with how you use it, it's not too bad. As I said, arbitrator-wise, remove getting rid of memorable death, because everyone just auto re-rolls that, or will auto re-roll that. If you were restrained in how you use it, it will be perfectly fine. But as with anything in Necromunda, if you want to abuse it, it has been written for narrative purposes and not for super balanced gameplay purposes, so it can be abused. But that's just Necromunda, to allow us to have all of the narrative fun that we want. They've gone a bit... They're on the wild side of the rules writing. So if this is your first video you've watched of mine, well done for making it this far. But I always have this meter in my head of how tweaked the rule set is, like tightened, all the everything polished up to be perfect. Whether or not a rule set ever is, I don't think so. But it's like the crazy versus balanced scale. I always like things to be more crazy than trying new things, trying crazy things, to just show us what the universe is like more. The more polished everything is, the more vanilla everything tends to be. Whereas the more crazy things are, and they're just like going off and like they're using a load of chems, maybe using it twice because they are squats at the Games Workshop HQ. They're using it twice, coming up with some crazy ideas. Do I think this is crazy or polished on the craziness table? Especially the Ancestor skills. I think it's on the crazier side. I don't think it's like meltdown, brain expand crazy, but I think they've tried something. I think the majority of them are good, but then are they as good as Goliath Genesmithing? I mean, we will see. I don't think they are. I think they are perfectly fine. I think they are good. I think the squat gang in general is good, but it's sort of like mid-high of the pack, which is sort of where you want to be. They're not rage-inducing unless your name is Phil, and they're not terrible, unplayable, like, say, Chaos Helot cult gangs are now. Well, hopefully you enjoyed that guide. I actually really enjoyed going through it. I'm currently making some squats, so you'll see them on channel soon. We've just finished up our Secundus campaign, so we will be going into the Ash Wastes, and I will have at least a few squats alongside another gang, if not a full gang of squats itself. And I will catch you next time we do some Necromunda content. I'll see you in a bit.